Hi, I'm Gina and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be doing some curtains and some soft furnishings for the living room and entranceway. So I'm going to create a curtain that goes in between the entranceway and the living room. It's sort of more iconic to the TV series where there's actually a blue curtain that sort of pulls to one side over the entranceway into the living room. So let's have a look at the couple of spaces. So the first step is to cut out some pieces of foam board that I'm going to use to pin the curtains to so that we can create some folds and some draping of the fabric. And I'm going to cover that in tin foil because the mixture that we're going to use to do that is a water and glue mixture and it's quite wet. So the tin foil just protects the foam board from warping and twisting or getting in the way basically. Once I've wrapped the foam board in tin foil, what I'm going to do is mark out the areas of the window. And so the top of where I want the top of the curtain to where I want the bottom of the curtain, and also where the windows actually fall. So I can just make sure that when I'm pinning them into place that I'm actually going to be able to cover the curtain in the right place or leave the window open so that we can so that makes it look a little bit more real. So the next step is to cut out the fabric. I used to work in soft furnishings a long time ago, but one of the things that we always used to calculate was like double width of the window. So I've actually used that same methodology here to give it enough fullness within the gather and the pleats and the folds within the fabric to make it look as real as possible. So I've taken whatever the size of the window is and doubled it, and then also just taken the length. Now I've cut it longer because what I'm going to do is actually, once the fabric is folded and pinned together, I'm going to actually cut it to length. And what I prefer is that the fabric actually comes all the way down to the floor. I'm also going to use a dowel, a small, I think it's about a 3mm diameter dowel as a curtain rod. You're not going to see it. I'm going to sew it inside the top of the curtain. So what I do is fold over that top of the curtain, run a stitch, just hand stitched through the top, just leaving enough so I can thread the dowel through, and then once the dowel's sort of thread through, I can pull the thread tight, which will create the gather. You don't have to do this step, but for me personally, it just gives me a much better control over the gather and the pleats that I can create. Out of this blue fabric, it's actually quite good. Like, the fabric itself is a cotton, and it's already kind of got this crushed look to it anyway. So actually, as I'm pulling it through, the pleats are actually coming together really nicely, so it isn't taking a lot of effort at all. So now I'm going to mix up the glue. I've just got a half and half mixture of glue. I'm just using a PVA glue, but you can basically use any sort of craft glue, anything that's going to dry clear. So by using the water and glue mixture, it allows the curtain to drape, which would not normally happen in such a small scale because the density of the fabric just wants to go off in its own direction. And so by trying to control it with the water and glue, it means that it just looks a little bit more real. And then I'm going to dunk in the fabric. So trying to get as much of it as wet as possible. I'm trying not to get too much of the dowel wet, because it's only really the fabric that needs, and the dowel's already got the gather on it because we've used the thread through it, so it's actually already kind of got that gather around it. One of the things I didn't realize at the time, and you'll see it a little bit later on in the video, but there is a patch that didn't get any water on it, and it has changed the color, or it's actually kept the original color. The rest of the curtain has changed color with the water. One thing to remember if you're unsure, to do a test piece, which is something that I didn't do. I'm not too bothered about it. It's in an area that you're not going to see directly, but if it was in an area that you'd see directly, it would really annoy me, which I'm sure it probably would you as well. So once the fabric is soaked in the glue, what we're going to do is get our tinfoil covered foam board back with all the markings on it, and we're just going to lay that on top, or the soaked fabric and the curtain on top, and pin the top of it to where you got your markings on the tinfoil. And then just sort of playing around with it and sort of moving it into place where you want the folds to be, where you want the pleating of the curtain of the fabric to be, what looks the most natural, and then just start pinning those into place. This one didn't need that many pins because, as you can see, the fabric itself is just falling into place really nicely, so it doesn't need a lot. And then once you've done that, it's just basically setting it aside to dry completely. What I did was actually stuck it in front of my heater, and then as it started to dry a little bit, I sort of encouraged it to lift off the tin foil. It will come off the tin foil fine, but just encourage it to come off and just let, it's a little fan heater, but just let the air sort of blow underneath it, and that helped dry it a little bit quicker. Yeah, make sure it's dry overnight if possible. I'm a bit impatient, so I didn't let it dry overnight, but a good couple of hours anyway to just let all that water and glue mixture just evaporate away. On to the next set of curtains. This one's a little bit different because it's actually two sets of curtains side by side. And just like what I did with the fraying of the edges, this fabric is actually quite a bit thicker, and I didn't really want too much of the edges to be seen. Actually, as I unfolded the fabric, I noticed that the selvage edge, which is actually got quite a lovely texture on it. So I'm actually going to use that as the inside edge of the curtain to try and give it like a look that it's got a bit of trim on it. Gone through exactly the same process, turned over the top, hand stitched it through. As I've gotten to the end, threaded the dowel through, pulled through on the stitching to create the gather, tied it off, and then closed up each end so that the dowel itself is sitting within that within those two curtains. So I've used one dowel for both of the curtains. Again, using the same glue mixture, half and half mixture of water and glue. This fabric had a little bit more polyester in it. It wasn't as easy to mould, and it took a lot more pins to pin it into place. But you can use as many pins as you like, as you'll see. I used quite a few, but it needed them because otherwise it just wouldn't have given the same level of detail that I wanted to get out of it. Yeah, so once you're happy with it, pin it all together and then pop it aside and make sure it's completely dry. This one here took a little bit longer to dry. I thought with the polyester in it, actually it would take not as long as the other one with a bit more cotton in it, but you know, you just never know. It was just the way that it was. Once it's all dry, then what you can do is cut it to length. So as you can see, I've cut this one to length because it's started life a little bit longer, and then just take it off the foil and foam board backing, and then you can fit it into place. So this one here, I actually haven't provided any glue on it. The fabric itself is with the glue and water mixture, once it's dry, has created a really kind of a stiff fabric, so it's not going to blow around in the wind. It's not going to have that kind of feeling about it, but it is going to stay in place. So it actually does stand by itself. And I'm just going to sit this into place because I know the dowel is to the right size, plus with a bit of fabric around the end, it's actually created a really nice tight fit. So just placing that into the project, and then we're going to do the same with the blue fabric as well. So with the blue one, I just cut that one also to length, and then placing it into place just to make sure that the length is right, and that the way that it's sort of gathered off to one side is also going to be right as well. With this one here, I am going to create a bit of a tie back just with a bit of thread. I was playing around with some beads as well, but I just couldn't really make them work without it looking too chunky. And often the hole for the beads, and I didn't want to muck around with it for too much, but often the hole for the bead is generally designed to take a very thin thread or a wire. So with the embroidery cotton, it was just too thick, but it was actually perfect for what I was looking for, just to create that, just a little bit of a tie back, and actually in the end it didn't need anything more than that. So yeah, let's put it all together and see what it looks like.